The U.S. bracing for retaliation from Iran after carrying out the largest B-2 stealth bomber attack in history. The U.S. launching Operation Midnight Hammer over the weekend, a highly precise mission to take out Iran's most important nuclear sites. New pictures this morning showing the before and after of the strikes on Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. The historic decision to strike essentially decimating Iran's nuclear weapon ambitions.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
All right, so let's look at how the U.S. military got it done. You're seeing one of our biggest threats right there. 14 bunker buster bombs weighing 15 tons, each dropped on 3 Iranian nuclear sites. Our B-2 aircraft, they flew 18 hours, 6,900 miles from Missouri all the way to Iran. U.S. aircraft went undetected going in. They were undetected carrying out the mission, and they were still undetected leaving for the 18-hour journey back to the United States. The 7 B-2 bombers now back on U.S. soil this morning. Many people around the country may have seen it on social media as they saw some of those B-2 bombers coming back. United States citizens cheering upon their return, congratulating the U.S. military for a safe operation. Here is footage of them arriving. You're looking at this. They are arriving at Whiteman Air Force Base. This, again, their home base in Missouri. All in all, get this, 125 U.S. aircraft taking part in this operation, in addition to a submarine which launched 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles.
Meantime, Iran vowing revenge. An Iranian state TV host, a mouthpiece essentially for the Ayatollah, warning up to 50,000 American soldiers will be returned to Washington in, quote, coffins after President Trump raised the possibility of a regime change in Tehran. Israel is on heightened alert, obviously. Correspondent Nick Robertson is on the ground for us in Tel Aviv. Nick, what is the latest there?
Yeah, incoming strikes in the very early hours of the morning. Different, it appears Iran is changing its tactics. Sirens went off all across the country, 3 a.m. Only one incoming missile. About 5 or 6 hours later, again, a change of tactic by Iran. It was a wave of sirens in the north, then a few minutes later in the center, then again in the south, and then more sirens going off in the north again. And it meant for the whole country a disruption, more time in the shelters, and only 5 or 8 missiles fired by Iran in those 4 waves. And that is much lower than we've seen recently, be 20 or 30 missiles in a salvo. Disruptive as well because it hit the electricity supply, cutting power to a couple of towns. Disruptive because it prevented some aircraft that were inbound to Israel to land. They had to fly loops or turn around. So Iran is lowering the number of missiles it's firing, but doing it staggered in a more disruptive way, it appears.
Nick, is there any indication out of the Israeli government that Israel will step up their own pressure on Iran and continue to lean on the U.S.? And do we know if Iran's supreme leader now clearly in the IDF's sights? Are they looking for a regime change?
Israel has changed its tactics partially, and it appears part of that is directed towards the potential for regime change. The defense minister today saying that Israel had an unprecedented level of strikes on Tehran. The IDF saying that they were targeting internal security apparatus of the regime. They targeted Evin prison, where the regime in Tehran puts its most feared, if you will, political prisoners. The doors were blown off of the prison. The Besiege, a volunteer paramilitary force that's part of the IRGC that is often used by the leadership in Iran to suppress anti-regime protests. They have a reputation for being brutal. Their headquarters targeted. the foreign minister here in Israel saying, we have warned the Iranian leadership not to target civilians. And you might think there he meant Israeli civilians. But then he goes on to say, but they didn't. And this was our answer with a picture of Evan jail. So it is very clear the Israeli leadership is telling the Iranian population, we're trying to protect you. They're not saying use this opportunity to rise up, but the implication seems to be there. And that's different from previous. Israel continues to target Iran's nuclear facilities, continues to target its missile launch facilities, but now is targeting the tools of internal repression and security inside of Iran. And that appears to be a clear signal leaning towards regime change.
And we know, Nick, that the Iranian regime has cut off all internet to the people, so that message from Israel might not be getting through to the people. Nick Robertson for us live on the ground in Tel Aviv. Nick, be safe. Thank you.